Hello, I'm Ray with yet another podcast episode for you. This time all about the high street. Now there's been a lot of talk, hasn't there, on the news, radio, television about the high street. It's dying, it's dead, it's gone. Reviving the high street. How are we going to revive it? One chap on the radio the other day was saying you can't revive something that's dead. Flogging a dead horse, as he put it. Is that right? Can it be revived? I don't know. Do you remember when Woolworths disappeared? Woolworths had been there. Well, I remember going into Woolies when I was a child, and we'd all march in there, the floorboards. It was like a background noise of drums, all the floorboards, the shoes on the floorboards. I remember that. The minute you walked into Woolworths, it was a kind of like drums, I suppose, floorboards. People all walking about. It was packed. What I liked about Woolworths was it meant I was going to get a toy, a little plastic car or tin car or something like that. I would get a toy, and they did sweets, didn't they? I don't know what else they sold, to be honest. On the car it would say made in Hong Kong. I remember that. I remember people saying, oh, that's rubbish, made in Hong Kong. And there was Empire Made. Do you remember that? Empire Made. I never did know what that meant when I was a child. What's this? Where's Empire then? I've never heard of it. I've heard of Hong Kong, never heard of Empire. Happy days. But Woolworths disappeared. Sadly, they disappeared from the high street. The high street is the main street in the town, isn't it? It might not be called the high street. It might be called Bloggs Place. It might be called anything. But it's known as the high street, isn't it? The main shopping street or area in the town. So what's happening? People blame Amazon. I heard someone on the radio, oh, it's all Amazon's fault because everyone's buying online now from Amazon. Now, is it Amazon's fault or is it our fault? I remember years and years ago when supermarkets began to spring up all over the place. People were saying, support your local business, support your local shops. Don't go to these big supermarkets because the small local shops will disappear. So what did everyone do? They all flocked to the supermarkets. And what did the local shops do? They disappeared. I also remember the big DIY shops coming into being. Out of town with the supermarkets, big shops opening, big shoe shops opening out of town. People would say, I want to buy half a dozen screws, about an inch long and about, an eighth of an inch thick or something like that diameter. You go to your local ironmonger, and he'd help you. He'd say, yeah, look, here we are. I've got these screws. I've got these round head, look, countersunk. He'd show you. And you could buy, a handful. I think he weighed them. They weighed nails, didn't they? I'll have a quarter of a pound of 1 inch nails, please. How many of you remember? I bet you youngsters don't remember that. Quarter pound of 1 inch nails. And then people were moaning. I remember hearing on the TV and the radio, oh, now you have to go to these big shops. The little ironmonger's gone. I only wanted half a dozen screws. I had to buy a pack of 5 million. Well, perhaps it wasn't 5 million. But I must admit, I buy screws now by the 100. Because I think, well, I'm not going up there, keep going up there every time I want a certain size screw. And I've got an amazing stock of screws. I never use them all. One day when I'm gone, people will say, what are we going to do with all these screws? Look. But that was the thing. You could get help in the local shop. A local drapery. Was it drapery? Draper's shop? Where you could buy curtains. You could go in there and say, right, what do I do? I've got a bay window. I want curtains. What sort of track will I have? And they knew all about it. They'd help you. They'd even come out and fit curtains if you wanted them to. Whereas now, you go to one big central place, and if you ask someone, I don't know. That's what we've got there. That's what we sell. I don't know anything about it. In fact, there was a chap recently, I was overhearing a conversation, our big local DIY store. This is going back some time, before COVID. And he said, I've just had the ceiling plastered, and he wanted paint. He was in the paint department. And the plasterer said I should dilute the first coat of emulsion. Is that right? And the chap behind the paint counter sort of looked and he said, I don't know, I've never heard of that before. Well, you should actually dilute it with 30% water. Anyway, the chap behind the counter said, well, look, there's white emulsion. You want vinyl silk? There it is. Just put a couple of coats of that on. That'd be fine. Now, a plasterer once told me that if you do that, the emulsion eventually will peel. off the newly plastered ceiling. It will peel. I don't know. You can't get advice anymore from the big shops. You just can't get advice. When I was a boy, here we go. When I was a girl, back in the 50s, I'd go into town with my grandmother or my mother, and I remember all the shops, rows and rows of shops. They had blinds over, in the summer to keep the sun out. They had blinds. I've seen old photos on the internet of our town, my hometown, rows of shops with all the blinds. And I can remember a lot of the shops. What was it? One called Eisted's, I believe. They had sacks. The old sacks, not bin liner sacks, not plastic. This is before plastic. Sacks all along the front of the counter. I think it was grain or something, but I can't remember what were in the sacks. The shopkeeper would come round the front of the counter with his sort of stainless steel shovel thing. Probably wasn't even stainless steel then, rusty old metal thing. And he'd fill a paper bag with whatever it was you wanted from these sacks, chuck it on the scales and tell you how much. Oh, that'll be 7 and 6pence or whatever. 1 and 7pence halfpenny and 3 farthings or something like that. But that was good. You could buy exactly what you wanted. No plastic. Just going back to the nails and screws for a minute. These days you buy a packet of screws. They're in a blister pack, isn't it? A bubble pack. You get home, take the screws out, the pack goes in the bin. Didn't anyone ever think way back then, what's going to happen to that plastic? As soon as you get home, you chuck it in the bin. Where's it going to go? Because you can't get rid of plastic. If you burn it, it just melts into a blob. So, I don't know, I suppose no one ever thought what's going to happen eventually. So we've now lost, or we're losing, Debenhams, is it? Topshop, various other shops. This Arcadia group are disappearing. What's going to happen to these shops where these big companies were? Our Debenhams store inside, it's a huge area. I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of square feet. It's a massive area. Now, of course, rents are high in the middle of the town. I think most people rent shops in the town. What's the landlord going to say? He wants his rent. I don't know how many thousands of pounds a month they get in rent for these huge places. What's the landlord going to do with an empty shop? No one else wants a shop that size, do they? No one will be thinking, I'll start up a little electrical shop, little electrical business. Yeah, I'll have the old Debenhams building, the size of a football pitch inside. They don't want it, and they couldn't afford the rent anyway. So what will happen to these huge shops? Someone said to me the other day, how about making small, affordable flats, like one-bedroom flats, or even bedsit type places? Well, yeah, that's an idea, isn't it? I don't know what the landlord would say to that, because he won't get anything near the rent from places like that if you're going to rent these little dwelling places out. Also, there'll be no windows. That's a great idea, but each of these little flats or apartments inside the big building, they won't have windows. So that's not going to be much fun if you live there. Now, on the radio again today, I heard someone saying, how about indoor markets? Yeah, that's a good idea. A load of market stalls all set out properly. There's lighting in there, there's electricity, there's heating even, if you want that. But how much is a market stall holder going to pay in rent for his stall in there? Again, the owner of the building, the freehold building, if he wants thousands of pounds a month, well, you're not going to get that from these little market stall people. They're not going to pay that. They can't afford it. Chap said to me years ago, he had a shop in the town, and he said to me years ago he said, I have to work from Monday to Thursday in my shop, full 4 days in the shop. That profit covers the rent. He said, Fridays, I work all day Friday. The profit from Friday pays all the other bills. Saturdays is my profit. So whatever he took Saturday, that was profit. And as he said, it's rents that kill shops. People just cannot afford the rent. It was only a few years ago people were saying, the town now, it's just full of estate agents and charity shops. That's all that's left. Estate agents and charity shops. The estate agents disappeared. They don't want to pay the rent down the town. They're going online. Charity shops are still going. I don't know what they do rent-wise. I don't know what the owners of the shops, the building, do about rent. Perhaps they'd rather have someone in there at a cheaper rent than nothing at all. I don't know. That's an interesting one. So now we have coffee shops, which is great if you like coffee. I do not like these weird, what is it, latte? Skinny latte. I want to go into a shop and say, can I have powdered type coffee, Maxwell House, Nescafe, a spoonful of that, teaspoonful of that in a cup with some hot water on it and then a dash of cold milk. That's coffee. That's how I was brought up. When I was a boy, that was coffee. These days, it's all these machines, isn't it? All this stuff. Do you want this? Do you want that on it? And there's a heart-shaped thing on the top. I had one of these weird coffees once. Well, the first and last time I ever had one. And it was in a soup bowl. And I said to my wife, I didn't want soup, I wanted coffee. She said, that is coffee. It didn't look like it on top. It was all frothy. I thought it was mushroom soup or something. And I said, well, why is it in a soup bowl? I wanted a cup. She said, well, that's how coffee comes. I was looking for the spoon. I was looking for the soup spoon. I don't want a soup bowl. I want a cup of coffee or a mug. That'll do. Don't they do mugs of coffee? Used to be able to go into the cafe and just say, I'll have a coffee. Mug or a cup? Yeah, mug will do. That was it. Not, do you want skinny latte? Do you want this or that? Or fat latte? Or tall latte? I don't know. I don't understand it all. It's all disgusting. Mind you, people do say I'm abnormal, which is probably right. To be honest, I'm not normal. I realise that. Most people go into the coffee shop and want a weird coffee. Now, it's not weird, is it? If most people want it, that's normal. So I'm the weird one because I want what used to be normal coffee. Anyway, let's move on from coffee. So we've got coffee shops. Estate agents have gone. What's left? All the other little shops have gone. The ironmonger. Hairdressers will keep going, of course, because supermarkets can't really sell haircuts. Well, they could. I suppose they could have a hairdressing department, but basically I don't think that's going to work. Post offices have gone, and I'm surprised that supermarkets don't have post offices in their buildings. You could take your parcels there and then do a bit of shopping or whatever it is you're doing. They did have pharmacies or chemists, didn't they, in supermarkets? Our local one did, which was quite handy, but that disappeared. I don't know why that disappeared. I'm not mentioning names of companies, you'll realise, because I don't want to be controversial, you know. I'd love to sit here and have a good old rant, a good old Ray's rant about all sorts of things, political and otherwise, but I better not because people might kick off. I don't want to upset people. So what I'm doing, I'm saying, well, I heard this on the radio and I heard that on the radio, which is true, but I'm just putting it across to you. I'm not sitting on the fence, but without chucking my opinion in. Well, I do, don't I? My opinion to an extent. I think the thing is these days, too many people sit on the fence. They don't want to upset anyone, so they sit on the fence. And I have been accused of sitting on the fence. It's not that I'm doing that. I'm trying to put both sides equally. Now, if I were a landlord and I owned a shop in the town, obviously I want as much rent from that shop as possible. I'm in business to make money. You know, I'm not renting out my shop to help some little local shopkeeper run his business. I'm in business to make money, and my money comes from the rent from my shop, or shops if I have lots of them. So I'm not knocking landlords, and I'm not knocking Amazon. I mean, it's great. Amazon have gone from strength to strength. Whether they pay proper income tax in each country is another thing, a bit like Google. You know, people say, oh, they should be paying millions in tax. Well, I don't know about that. Anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about shops. So, as I said earlier, people say, oh, it's Amazon's fault. No, it's not. It's our fault for going to Amazon. And I must admit, I work from home restoring vintage radios. I want a tube of glue for whatever reason. Yes, I could walk into town and get a tube of Bostik or whatever glue. There are other makes which are equally as good. Have you heard that? People say that. Well, as far as I'm concerned, I like Bostik. There's Yoo-hoo glue, that's all right, I suppose. Anyway, if I walk into town, I'm going to be gone for about an hour. By the time I've walked into town, I don't even know where you buy glue in town. Can you buy glue? Then I've got to walk back. The crossing gates will be closed because there's about 10 trains passing. I eventually get back here. It's going to be about an hour. It could be raining. It could be horrible. I've missed phone calls because I work from home. Customers phone me. I missed phone calls. If I order it online, not necessarily from Amazon, eBay or wherever. If I order it online, it'll be here tomorrow. Unless I urgently want it now, if I can wait till tomorrow, it'll be here tomorrow and it'll be cheaper. This is the thing, it'll be cheaper. Just going back to small businesses for a minute, take the online auction places like eBay and the rest of them. There are a lot of small businesses on eBay doing extremely well. I buy radio valves, for example, from a particular company that are on eBay. They don't have a shop in the high street. Well, they wouldn't sell valves, radio valves anyway. No one wants them these days, apart from me. So they've got an online business through eBay, and there's Etsy, isn't there, and various others, Gumtree and whatever. So a lot of these smaller businesses do have online opportunities through places like eBay, and I believe Amazon sell second-hand goods, don't they, that people put on. You can sell through Amazon, can't you? I've often seen that on there. This is sold by Amazon, or it's sold by so-and-so through Amazon. So a small business owner who perhaps would have a shop but can't afford the rent, he can go online and have an online presence, as they put it these days, and be quite successful, make some money. The other thing about going into town, I can walk because it's not too far from where I live. If you need to drive, now this is the thing, obviously you have to park. Where are you going to park in town? You're going to have to pay. I went over to Brighton a few years ago with my wife. £12 parking for the day. £12. We thought we'd do the daily thing. I forget how many hours it was, because we were going to have a look around the shops, look along the seafront in Brighton, fish and chips on the seafront, and have lunch out, all this sort of thing. We overstepped the mark a little bit. We stayed a little bit longer than we should have done in the car park. £25 we had to pay. £25. But all right, that was our fault. It would have been 12. The reason they charge so much for parking is because if it's free or very cheap, anyone that works in Brighton is going to go and park in one of these places all day. If it's a fiver, it's probably worth them parking there. If it's £12 or more, they're not going to do it. And you've got to keep people that work there out of the parking places. You just want the shoppers to park there. But the shoppers aren't going to pay that sort of money. So you're driving shoppers out of the town with the parking charges. I remember when parking meters first came in, they're all put downtown and everyone was saying, oh, you have to pay for parking. Because I do remember before double yellow lines, I would drive down the town. I could park where I liked. You find a spot somewhere, I'll park there. There's no time limit. There's no traffic warden, no parking meters. But of course, going back to then, when I was a boy, there were far fewer cars on the roads. I mean, now you can't move for cars. Look at the side roads, the side streets where people live, full of cars. You could have one household, easily have 4 cars. Parents have got a couple of cars. Couple of kids, they've got a car each. There's 4 cars. And where do they put them? They won't all fit on the drive. A lot of people have made their front gardens into a parking place, but you can't fit 4 cars on there. So there are far too many cars. I mean, what do? Do you say to people, right, you're not allowed to have more than 1 car per family? Well, you can't do that, can you? That's just not going to work. Wouldn't it be interesting to come back in the future? You know how people say 50 years from now, 100 years from now, what will it be like? That would be interesting. I said to someone the other day, what will it be like in 1,000,000 years from now? Now the world, the earth, is millions and millions of years old, isn't it? What will it be like in 1,000,000 years from now? Well, there won't be shops, will there? I doubt there'll be houses. There won't be roads. There won't be cars. I don't know what there'll be. Will there be television? Will there be mankind? There's a thought. Will there be people? Can you say mankind, or has it got to be woman? No, person kind, is it? You've got to be politically correct. Person kind. No, mankind means all people, doesn't it? Of all genders. Don't get me on genders. Anyway, politically correct. I am not very good at being politically correct. I have to restrain myself. That sounds awful. I should go to the doctor. During these podcast episodes that I record, I have to restrain. I have to think, don't say this, don't say that, don't mention that, for goodness sake. Someone will be upset. Someone will be offended. oh, should I do a podcast episode on being offended? Some people are offended because others aren't offended. Anyway, I forget what I was saying now. Look, I digress. 1,000,000 years from now, will we be here? Will Mother Nature have taken the planet Earth back again? Will she have destroyed all the buildings? They've just crumbled into the ground where they first came from, because everything comes out of the ground, doesn't it? The device you're listening to now, your computer, your mobile phone, iPad, whatever, your car, your house, everything comes out of the ground. Every single thing came out of the ground originally. Your furniture, everything, your clothes, it's all come out of the ground. Will Mother Nature take the whole thing back? And in 1,000,000 years from now, planet Earth will just be rainforests and animals. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be lovely? All the animals could roam around free. Anyway, I've gone off on some weird tangent. I told you I wasn't normal. I suppose some of the smaller shops could be made into flats or dwelling places. If you took the shop front out and put a wall and a front door, a lounge window, that could be your lounge. But of course the rooms behind, they'd have no windows, and that wouldn't work, would it? I know what'll happen if the shops disappear. They will be replaced with, you've guessed, blocks of flats, as if we haven't got enough blocks of flats. Stone the crows, they're everywhere. There's a huge ugly block of flats in my hometown. Horrible place to look at. Towers way up into the clouds. Well, not quite that high. And the other day online I saw a photograph of the house that was originally there years ago. I remember when this block of flats was built. And I saw this black and white photo of this house. Lovely, great house, gardens all round, huge place. But of course, who wants huge places like that these days? 15 reception rooms, 14 bathrooms, 1,500 toilets. Can you imagine having to clean 1,500 toilets? Well, it wasn't that big, but it was a huge house. Of course, they had staff. They had servants, had a butler, they had people to do things. You imagine all the coal fires that had to be lit. Anyway, I'm going off on some weird tangent again. Now, parades of shops outside the town centre. You start to go out of town, you get parades of shops, like a row of, say, 6 shops. Limbrick shops, Limbrick Corner, Tarring Road, Broadwater, quite a bit of a shopping centre there. But you get these little areas of shops. Goring Green, there are some shops all over the place. Actually, thinking about it, there are a lot. And of course, they serve their immediate area, the local housing estates, the immediate area. So people there, unless they have to go into town for something specific, which these days I don't think you have to, they will go to their local shop. Yes, they're a little bit more expensive, corner shops, convenience stores, as the name suggests. It's convenient, so you don't mind paying a little bit more. But I think those shops out of the town centre and away from the big retail parks where the supermarkets are and the big shops, I think they'll survive the immediate local shop. You want some milk, you've run out of jam or something, you just pop round the corner shop. I think they will stay for quite some time. Okay, back to the original question. What's going to happen to the high street? Well, basically, after all this rabbiting, I don't know. I haven't got a clue. Sorry about that. I hope you weren't thinking I was going to come up with some stunning ideas, some original ideas for the high street. I think one day it won't exist. Don't know. What do you think? Let me know. Email me. Raise Rants, or one word, RAYS, RANTS, Raise Rants, at protonmail.com. I do answer all emails if I can, rude ones or otherwise. Raise Rants at protonmail.com. Thanks for listening. Christmas is approaching. Am I allowed to mention the C word? It won't offend anyone, will it? Christmas is approaching. I might try and think of a special Christmas episode. Take care, look after yourselves. See you next Sunday. Bye-bye for now.